I'd like to thank the National Writing Project for inviting me to speak at the general session for this year's annual meeting, and for the support and encouragement that the Writing Project has shown for my writing and my message about motivating and inspiring children to read. I would not be a published writer without the Writing Project. I might not be in the classroom today without the Writing Project, and I know that many of you feel the same way. Last year, while standing in front of my hotel at the TCTELA conference, Carol Jago introduced herself to me, and we chatted about our shared experiences as Writing Project teacher consultants. I told Carol, the Writing Project saves teachers. And she responded, the Writing Project saves good teachers. Carol revealed to me that before she joined the Writing Project, she considered going to law school. And I told her that when I joined the Writing Project, I was spiraling, sitting in grad school, trying to figure out how to remain in a profession that didn't seem to have a place for me in it. Frederick Robertson describes a home as the one place in all this world where hearts are sure of each other. It is the place of confidence. It is the place where we tear off that mask of guarded and suspicious coldness which the world forces us to wear in self-defense, and where we pour out the unreserved communications of full and confiding hearts. The Writing Project gave me a home when I needed one, and I'm eternally grateful. Recognizing that this is a writing conference and you expect me to say something profound or inspiring about writing, I'm nervous. I feel like a charlatan, an imposter, a fake. You see, I hate writing. I'm an English teacher. I am a professional writer. I'm supposed to love writing. I see the irony. I suffer from flashing cursor syndrome. Is anyone else similarly afflicted? Okay. Some days walking towards my laptop fills me with dread. That awful blink, blink, blink. I find myself talking to the screen. What do you want from me? I have nothing for you today. I furiously tap out a few lines. After all, getting started is the hardest part, right? I set tiny goals and reward myself with a break after every page. Okay, honestly, every paragraph. Chained to the computer, I check my word count often and sigh. I double space what I've written to convince myself that I've accomplished something. I write 2 sentences and then spend an hour on the internet looking for research to support what I wrote. I look for synonyms for the word student in the Microsoft Word thesaurus and discover that there aren't many. I review my writing, checking my passive word count. No more than 5%, that's my personal limit. I cut and paste sentences, moving words around the page, hoping to turn a sow's ear into a silk purse. When I finally record a few measly paragraphs, I wander the house, conscripting family members to listen to my writing, desperately seeking encouragement or praise. I actively avoid writing, casting about for anything I can do that appears productive. I make coffee and drink too much of it. I go to the bathroom and organize the medicine cabinet while I'm there. I fluff pillows and consider rearranging all the furniture in the living room. My husband, Don, can tell if the writing isn't going well because he comes home to find dinner ready. And the dining room table stacked with cleaned laundry. Although his name is Don, he has learned not to ask me, how's it going? Like a magpie, I allow shiny things, mostly on the internet, to distract me. I go on to Twitter and parse my words into 140 character bytes. Did you know that there's an advice blog on the internet titled I Hate Writing? The author stopped posting to it 18 months ago. I guess he hated writing too much to continue. I check my email innumerable times, hoping that inspiration will magically appear in my inbox, until I open a missive from my editor begging me to turn in something for her to edit. Donald Murray famously said, "Writing is never finished, it's simply abandoned." And Kelly Gallagher recently said, "Writing is never done, it's just due." And I admit that on my worst writing days, the word deadline motivates me. Deadline, a word that should be written in capitals and shouted when spoken. While writing The Book Whisperer, I avoided writing by downloading songs to my iPod and researching quotes about reading and writing. If you've read my book, you've seen my quotes from these productive efforts. I couldn't figure out how to work in the lyrics from Journey's Wheel in the Sky into the narrative. You see, the chorus of that song holds one of the truest lines about my writing life that I can find. I don't know, I don't know, I don't know where I'll be tomorrow. Writing is hard. Nothing makes me feel more ignorant or ill-suited to the task than writing does. Writing is lonely. Writing is time-consuming. Writing is scary. Writing is boring, and I am lazy. I prefer to spend my Saturday afternoons blissfully reading someone else's writing, not struggling with my own. Do you remember the Kinks song, "I'm a lover, not a fighter"? Anybody remember that song? We're all aging ourselves if we're remembering it. Okay. It's such an iconic phrase now that you see it on t-shirts, but a more apt slogan for me would be, "I'm a reader, not a writer." Being a reader is the essence of who I am. I love the smell of old paper and bookstores. The UPS truck rumbling down my street, bearing my next book delivery, makes my heart race. Although I grew up in Texas, my heroes have never been cowboys. My heroes are book characters and the writers who create them. My classroom environment revolves around introducing my shelf children to my classroom children and facilitating friendships between them. On those days in my classroom when my lesson falls flat, the kids aren't with me, in order to get us through, I fall back on what I know best, my book knowledge and my passion for reading, and it gets us through most of the time. But not so for writing. As a new language arts teacher, I didn't have a clue about how to teach writing. Recognizing that I needed help, I tried to find a logical method for improving my writing instruction. I went to 6 trades training, not once but twice. I acquired a staggering pile of graphic organizers, editing checklists, rubrics. I bought every picture book anyone ever recommended to me. I read and reread touchstone books on teaching writing by Lucy Calkins and Nancy Atwell. I joined my district's writing team, which required me to go into colleagues' classrooms and teach writing. And the entire time, I felt that I wasn't a great writing teacher. I knew that something was missing, and I was at a complete loss to figure out what it was. After all, I had always been told that I was a good writer. I earned high grades on my writing from teachers, which they were the only audience that ever saw my writing. I consider myself the queen of the research paper, the mistress of the 5-paragraph essay. In high school, I wrote my assignments in the car on the way to school, while my best friend Larry navigated his Ford Pinto around potholes. I dodged my English teachers when they asked for my rough drafts. I never wrote any. Seemed like a waste of time. I don't think I was ever taught how to write. It seemed I was a student of what my fellow Texan Gretchen Burnaby would call the ass method of writing instruction. Assign the writing and then assess it. For me, writing was an obstacle course of grammar, mechanics, and formatting with an A on the other side, my only feedback or reward. Writing well was part of the school game, but I never wrote outside of school. Even after I became a language arts teacher, I didn't write outside of school. I wrote in front of my students as a model because someone told me I was supposed to. Writing for the sake of writing, though, held no real relevance for me. In my 5th year of teaching, I moved to a new campus. My principal was a visionary, and I knew that creating a reading program with my new colleagues from a clean slate was just the challenge that I needed. It was one of the hardest years of my career. Everyone in my department had been the chair or the curriculum facilitator at their former school. We argued in meetings and then went in our rooms and taught the way we wanted to. I did not feel that the other teachers at my school really understood me or what I was trying to do in my classroom. I spent half the year eating by myself. Hungry to learn and desperate to find like-minded colleagues, I decided that I needed to go back to grad school. So every week that fall, I sat with Audrey Wilson and Jennifer Isgett, listening to them talk about the North Star of Texas writing project and how much it changed their professional lives. The fire that I saw in their eyes when they talked about what they'd learned about writing and teaching during the Summer Institute fascinated me. I wanted that fire too. So I applied to the writing project that spring, and they took me. I think back on my application now, I think they realized I needed help. I wasn't entirely sure what I was getting myself into, but I didn't care. I only wanted a home. I only wanted to be a better writing teacher. Who knew that the writing project would change my life? I bet you could have told me that. Flash forward to that summer. I'm sitting in a school library, shaking with fear and emotion. For the first time in my life, I could see the audience for my writing right in front of me. It was one of the early days of the SI, and I was sitting in the author's chair sharing a poem that I wrote titled Silent Flyers. It took me 2 evenings to finish it, revising it over and over. Shocking, really, how much it took me to put anything honest on paper. My oldest daughter, Celeste, and I were having a tough time. We were angry at each other. I disagreed with her choices, and she rejected my advice and opinions. At 15, she had all the answers, and I felt like I didn't have any. Sitting in my backyard one night, watching a mother owl teach her children to fly, I realized Celeste was going to grow up and leave home someday. Perhaps I needed to listen more than argue before it was too late. Frayed edge feathers, silent, teaching your owlets to fly, one gracefully lands on the swing set. One clumsily lands in the woodpile. I heard your voice for the first time tonight, clicking, purring, calling out a mother's warning. I never fly silently. My voice, my laugh, my opinions, no secrets. But I'm quiet while watching you. Towering oaks protect us, sheltering both pairs of children, yours, mine, someday to leave the nest. The exposure and vulnerability almost overcame me. I still cannot read Silent Flyer without crying. I doubt most of my fellow TCs realized how terrified I was, or how deeply personal the poem was to me. Thankfully, it's a short poem. And my table wasn't very far from the front. I read those 78 words, voice choked with tears, and dashed back to my seat. Listening to my writing friends that summer during the Institute, I laughed and wept while they shared their writing, while they shared their lives with me. I recognized how miraculous it was, this sharing, and I felt that ember start to grow in my own eyes. There are moments in our lives that change us irrevocably: birthdays and funerals, graduations and retirement parties, weddings and anniversaries. These events, full of import and ceremony, mark our lives like obelisks along life's journey. We prepare for these days, often long in advance. We order flowers and food. We buy new clothes, and we write eulogies honoring our loved ones recently passed, commencement speeches envisioning successful careers, toasts celebrating new endeavors, vows promising love and eternal devotion. Writing has always been a record of what matters to us, capturing and preserving days both joyous and solemn. While each of us can name these landmark days, there are other events, unexpected, quiet, ordinary, but equally transformative and life-changing. That day, the day that I read Silent Flyer in front of my writing project family, was the day I realized what was missing from my teaching. The only way I was ever going to be a good writing teacher was if I wrote. The simple truth is the cornerstone of everything the National Writing Project stands for. Writers write. Later that same summer, I received a call from Elizabeth Rich, an editor at Teacher magazine. Elizabeth had worked with my principal, Ron Myers, a few years before, and she contacted him to see if he had any teachers who could write a one-shot Ask the Mentor column for the magazine. And Ron told her, "I have one." After introducing herself, Elizabeth asked, "I hear your students read 50 books a year without any rewards or incentives. Is that true?" And I said, "Isn't reading its own reward?" And she responded, "Well, how do you do it?" And put on the spot, I realized this was not an easy question to answer. I don't know. It's like I'm some sort of whisperer. I talk to the kids about books and they read them. The moniker, the book whisperer, stuck. I should have called myself something else. But here we are. And Elizabeth's original question stuck. How do you do it? Through my writing, I have been trying to answer that question ever since, both for myself and for the people who read my work. The first Ask the Mentor column turned into 3. Teacher magazine invited me to write a blog. I remember thinking at the time, I won't tell them that I don't know the first thing about blogging. When several publishers approached me about writing a book, I thought, I wonder how long it will take them to figure out that I'm not a writer. Whenever I receive an invitation to speak or submit an article, it still surprises me. Don't they know that I'm still trying to figure out how to be a good teacher? Ernest Hemingway said, "We are apprentices in a craft where no one becomes a master." He was referring to writing, but he might as well have been talking about teaching. I'm a school teacher. I don't jot random musings in a notebook. I fill spirals with book titles and conference notes. After long days at school, I'm too tired to write every day. I don't find inspiration from the weather. When it rains, I feel dismay because the children will not have recess today. And I need them to go outside. I don't find beauty in ordinary objects or feel compelled to write about them. My students fill me with wonder and gratitude. These children aren't objects, and they're certainly not ordinary. And that's what I choose to write about. I write about my students and our shared lives as readers and writers. Dorothy Parker famously said, "I hate writing. I love having written." I relate, I do. Discovering that I'm able, in spite of crushing insecurity and my complete lack of discipline, to write something worthy still amazes me. I think it's okay to admit that I have a love-hate relationship with writing because my students feel the same way. One of the most important writing lessons I can share with them is that it's okay to fear writing, but we have to jump into the fray. This year, my students and I joined National Novel Writing Month. Anybody else participating in NaNoWriMo? Are you writing right now? Okay. Are you behind on your word goals? Okay. It's a crazy worldwide event where writers of every stripe attempt to draft a novel in a month. And on the first day of the contest, I asked my students to portray how they felt about attempting such an outrageous writing goal. 97 of them writers, every one. Just a few weeks ago, thank you. I don't want to go. Just a few weeks ago, I went to my friend Susie Kelly. She's taught for 32 years. She knows everything. She still says she's learning. I couldn't decide how to guide my students through their latest writing piece, and students researched their names and interviewed their parents about their naming stories, but I was struggling with the next step, teaching them how to turn their parent interviews and research into a personal essay. And Susie laughed at me. "Donalyn, you're a writer. Stop obsessing about how you should teach that essay. Think about how you would write that essay, and then show your students how to do it." As young adult author Sarah Zarr admits, actually writing stuff really helps you feel like a writer. And so it all comes together. The National Writing Project pulled back the veil and helped me see what matters most for my students and me. I finally get it. Without the trappings or discipline, without confidence or experience, my students and I write. We are writers because we write, nothing less. Thank you. Thank you.